Paul Stancliffe had with me, but he's back. I've got Stancliffe, who's from the BTO, is the media manager there. And I want to talk to him about the new sort of WeBS report that's just come out this morning. But before we do that, hello, Paul, first of all, and thanks for giving us up your time.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk to you, Alan. It's been a while since we've chatted, so I'm looking forward to this. Good.
Well, we'll see how it goes. It's the first one, so we'll see how it goes. But before we talk about WeBS, which I do want to talk about because I've had the report this morning, had a quick look through it. It looks very interesting as usual. Just want to talk to you very quickly about what you've done with Garden Birdwatch, because I saw yesterday, and you know I'm a big advocate for anything sort of social media, and I saw yesterday that you'd actually made it free for people to join, and it seems like you've had sort of quite a good uptake. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, you know, the time for people to be looking into their gardens is now, isn't it? I mean, I've been in self-isolation for the last, well, this is my third week in self-isolation. So I'm spending a lot of time looking in my garden. And of course, there are going to be many, many people doing the same across the whole of the country. And we thought it'd be a really good idea while they're looking at their gardens and they may be taking records of birds. You know, they can submit that data to Garden Birdwatch. So we've opened up the survey to everybody and made it free for a year. So if people join today, they can take part in Garden Birdwatch at no cost for the rest of the year. And more importantly, submit their observations and take part in a citizen science project.
Yeah, amazing. Just one thing that I did want to ask. So, I mean, my garden's not very big, and I wouldn't say that I get loads of birds in it. Would I be somebody that you would want to actually be doing it? How important is it to have sort of both sides, if you like, of the coin? So, you know, the gardens that are going to get lots of birds and then others that might not get as many.
Yeah, I mean, we want all gardens. Basically, gardens like yours are probably the gardens we get least records for, so we know least about. And anybody can take part. It doesn't matter whether you've got a small urban garden. I mean, mine's a fairly urban garden. I'm in the middle of Thetford. Okay, it's a market town in Thetford Forest, but I'm in an urban setting here. But it doesn't matter whether you've got, you know, a small garden, a large garden. Just access to green space. You can do it from your balcony. You know, if you're seeing birds moving from your balcony, you can put them into Garden Birdwatch. But if you're looking over a green space, use that as your recording area. I mean, you know, we want as many records as we can get, particularly in the urban environment.
I got slightly distracted then as well because I just saw a bird fly into your back garden. So yeah, I think you've got something in there. Right, okay, so just a quick personal question, if you don't mind. No. You've been in isolation for a while. People that know you like I do will know that there is definitely a bird in your back garden. But people that know that you like I do will know that you are basically addicted to birding. How are you actually managing to get by not going out?
Well, you know what? It's my garden that's keeping me going, Alan. You're right. I am missing getting out bird watching. I mean, I've not been anywhere for 3 weeks. So looking in my garden's keeping me sane. I'm averaging about 21 species a day. And it's things like goldfinch. I don't know if you can hear goldfinch singing in the background now. Yeah. They're coming in every single day. I get wood pigeon, I get collared dove, but it's those little birds that I don't get very often, those little kind of jewels that are keeping me going, things that I'm not expecting to see. The best bird I've had in the last 3 weeks from my garden is peregrine falcon. Wasn't expecting that at all, but I'm getting the odd brambling popping in, the odd siskin, and I'm really getting to know my garden now, and I mean, it's making all the difference.
Sounds amazing. Sounds like I need to move in with you for the isolation period. So, right, let's talk a bit about WeBS. So I'm going to just hold this up just so people can see what we're talking about. This is the WeBS report. Am I right in thinking it's now available on the BTO website?
It is, yeah. It went live this morning.
Yeah, so this really is sort of fresh off the press. Collared dove. This really is fresh off the press. I'm not going to stop birding just because I'm here talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay, so yeah, fresh off the press this morning. I wonder if you can start off, Paul, by just giving us a little bit of background to what, first of all, WeBS means, and what actually it is.
Yeah, well, WeBS is the Wetland Bird Survey, and it's a survey that's carried out during the winter months, and we've got hundreds of people that go out every winter to wetland sites. So, you know, it can be large lakes, it can be small ponds, it can be estuaries, but they're wetland sites. And this is a count of our wetland birds, because the UK is incredibly important for wintering waterfowl. So things like swans, geese, ducks, but also waders, you know, birds like black-tailed godwit, for instance, large numbers during the winter months use our estuaries. And those numbers, as I said earlier, are internationally important. So these sites hold, like pochard. Pochard's a duck, a diving duck, and internationally important numbers of pochard spend the winter here. And what that means for the wetland sites that these birds are using is that they're important, because if we lost those sites, then we'd lose those birds. So those sites are given a special designation. Sites of so important that government have recognised this and specify so. Without the volunteers going out collecting that data, government wouldn't be able to give the designation to those sites and protect them in the way that they do. So it's really, really important survey.
That's a really good way of setting the scene, because you know I'm a big advocate for citizen science. I won't stop saying it. I won't stop harping about citizen science because I think it's amazing. Just sort of, if you wouldn't mind, can you give us an idea of some of the highlights? I know that clearly it's as fresh to you as it is to me. I've had a chance to look through some of it and still looking through it. I keep glancing down. It's here. I am looking at the WeBS report on my iPad. I'm not glancing away from you. But can you give us sort of a couple of what could best be classed as sort of the winners and losers from the last sort of report? Okay,
I mean, you know, some of the birds that are going down and we are concerned about, one I mentioned just now, pochard. Pochard numbers are declining year on year during the winter months here. We don't really know why. It might be that actually the population's fine in a kind of Europe-wide sense, and they're just staying on the other side of the North Sea more during the winter months because it's milder now, and they can perhaps do that. But it's a concern, and we're keeping an eye on that. We're keeping an eye on pochard numbers here during the winter months. But other birds, you know, numbers are growing. As a bird watcher, Alan, you know, you'll know about little egret. I mean, when I was a young bird watcher, little egret was an incredibly rare bird in Britain. And you had to travel to see one if you wanted to see one. Well, now little egrets are breeding across the whole of England, up into, you know, near the Scottish border now, and numbers are growing year on year. So that's a real success story. And we're now seeing more southern herons, we call them. Little egret was largely a Mediterranean bird until a decade or more ago. And more of those southern herons are coming into Britain and beginning to breed. So great white egret is another one. We're seeing very small numbers at the moment breeding, but you know, that may follow little egret and become a big success story too.
Yeah, looking at the report, it actually sort of picks out the cattle egret as well. I know on my old patch up north, Burton Marsh, they had breeding cattle egrets. I think might have even had it for the last couple of years, which I was a bit annoyed about because by then I was down here. It was no longer my patch, so you can imagine. So cattle egrets also sort of highlighted in here, and we are seeing wintering birds and in reasonable numbers. I mean, Welney had a couple of birds, and there's been some down in Haldgate Marshes in Norfolk. Is that likely to follow the trend, do you think? I know it's a wintering bird at the moment. How likely is that to sort of become as sort of, if you like, prolific as a breeder as something like the little egret? And what's causing that?
You know, I think it's going to be one of the new colonists. Very small numbers are attempting to breed, have bred successfully the last few years, and we are seeing larger flocks. You know, a winter count for a cattle egret roost down in the southwest now can reach 100 birds. So, you know, that's phenomenal, because we wouldn't even dreamt of those kind of numbers of cattle egrets when I was a young bird watcher. So it's almost certainly going to follow in the steps of little egret. It will be a colonist here, and we'll see more and more of them over the next few years. Why is that happening? I mean, it has to be as a result of milder winters, a changing climate, we get very few really hard frosts, certainly in southern Britain these winters. It snows a bit of a rarity. I've not had to scrape the ice off my car more than a handful of times this winter. It's been so mild, and that benefits birds like the cattle egret that are largely Mediterranean in origin.
Yeah, it's interesting you should mention global warming. I've just scrolled down to page 25 of the report, and it talks about global warming and the impact on particular of sort of golden plovers, and because of the sort of the warmer conditions are drying out the blanket bogs, things like that. Sort of, again, you've probably seen behind me the waders. You know what I'm like for waders. I love my waders.
Yeah.
That sort of, it's concerning about all birds, but in particular, something as amazing as golden plover, to sort of see them dying out, and things like the purple sandpiper as well have always, that's been highlighted in here as being also one to worry about.
Global warming, and you mentioned that, and we've seen that it's a success story for some birds like little egret and cattle egret, but for others, it is going to be a bit of a disaster. Some of the birds like golden plover that breed up on our moorlands, they're going to be pushed further and further north as the climate warms, and the habitat they breed in now becomes less suitable. And of course, you've not got to go too far north before they've got nowhere to go. So, they will struggle. Birds like golden plover, like dotterel, is another one that breeds up on our mountain tops. That's getting pushed higher and higher, and soon there won't be anywhere to go. So, there will be winners and losers, as always in these things. Yeah.
Right. I think we can leave it there about webs. I think people will be interested in the report. I'll put a link to it attached to the same page as the videos on. It's, as usual, an excellent report, and I know, we can't say enough about the volunteers and how much they do for it. How long has Webs been running now?
I'd have to look that up, Alan. Most of our surveys began in earnest in 1995, so it'll be 25 years or more for the Web survey. That's something for people to check out on our website.
Yeah, too right. Yeah, it's amazing. I know, and I might be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I remember reading that the longest running citizen science project is your heronry one. Is that right?
Yeah, the heronry survey is just amazing. It began in the late 1920s, and the BTO took it over in 1933, and it's been running ever since. Unbroken data set of its kind in the world. So we've got heronry data going back for decades, and it's fantastic when you look at that data, because you can see herons are susceptible to really cold winters, and you can chart the really cold winters through time by looking at the heronry data. So you look back in the 62-63 winter, and heron population really drops, and then you look again in the kind of early 80s, and there's a really cold snap and herons drop. And even in 2009, 2010, there was a cold snap and the heron population dropped. But what's really nice is you can look at that data and not get too concerned, because it bounces back very quickly. Yeah. Herons have the capacity to weather these little storms and then bounce back. It's an incredible survey.
Don't want to put you on the spot, but why can some birds do that and other birds can't?
Well, it depends on their niche, doesn't it? And the niche they occupy and their size. Grey herons have very few predators. So if they're breeding successfully and everything's right in the habitat, in a mild winter, and, they do well. But think of smaller birds. If we get a cold snap, the potential then to bounce back is a little bit slower for them, because they have lots of predators. So even though they produce slightly more young, the survival rate for those smaller birds during their first year is very low, but it will be higher for a bird like the grey heron. So, it has the capacity to bounce back a little bit quicker than some of those birds that are facing, more pressures.
That's brilliant. So I think that brings us around to the end of the conversation, although I really could talk to you all day. Have to say it again. citizen science and garden birdwatch. What you're doing is great for garden birdwatch. I really think people should get involved in that. And, you know, I know you had a few issues with them. There was so much demand that it crashed your website yesterday. Is that right?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, you know, we thought that there would be demand for this, particularly in this current time. But it caught us on the hop a little bit. It did take the website down quite a few times yesterday. The traffic was just enormous, which is fantastic because the lifeblood of the BTO. We've got scientists that crunch the numbers, our staff members, but without data being provided by citizen scientists, people like yourself, just watching the birds in your garden, there'd be no numbers to crunch. So they are the lifeblood of the BTO, and BTO volunteers are just amazing.
Right, well, that's one that I'm going to go and sign up to now. So I'll leave you to it. Thanks ever so much for your time, Paul. I know that, you know, this was fresh out the box this morning, so I might have put you on the spot a few times, but you've handled it superbly well, as usual. I'm going to leave you to your birds in your garden. If I start doing a Skype bird watch, so I can maybe keep a list of Skype interview bird watches, but I've only managed to identify collared dove and wood pigeon because they're the biggest. But I think I did hear a dunnock singing in the background.
Dunnock singing right now.
Oh, there you go. I can count that one as well. Right, Paul. Well, thanks ever so much for that, and have a great day.
Yeah, nice talking to you, Alan.
Cheers.